Hello. I wanted to talk today about weight gain. Why we have it, why we can't seem to make our weight budge, our weight point, I guess you could say. Um, some of the hidden reasons, I guess, and some of the lesser known reasons that we gain weight. So, one of the reasons, one of the major things that we overlook in the topic of obesity or weight gain in general is health. We don't speak much about the health behind things. We just go into, I want to lose these kilos. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want my body to look a certain way. And we forget about the health of the body. So if we focus only on the material aspect, like just the physical health of the body, the aspect of the body, the look, we can get ourselves into some trouble because sometimes the body is trying to do things which help it to stay healthy despite an onslaught of toxins and other things. So we have to be careful not trying to go against the body, which is, I'm a naturopath, and that's kind of what that means is we're kind of listening to nature and following that path. So when we start going against it, we can have more health problems and maybe even look better sometimes or look great, but like be entering into more health problems. So it just depends. I'm not saying that looking great equals health problems. I'm just saying that sometimes we're trying to force something. And or we try to exercise our mind over the body in that sense, but it's more just to produce a certain result without listening to the deeper needs of the body. So I'm not really sure if we really are. We're not mind over body or spirit over matter in those moments. We actually still haven't understood the deeper needs of the body, even though we're able to overcome certain parts of it. We still haven't understood the deeper needs. So yes, toxins would be number one, I think. There's a lot of toxins in the environment. Most people are in denial about the level of toxins in the environment. I mean, even though there's a lot of studies and a lot of things showing that we're finding hundreds and hundreds of different chemicals in newborn, in the mothers that pass directly from the mother to baby. They have a lot of these studies coming out about all of these different types of chemicals, but somehow we still are aloof to the fact that this is so real. So the minerals and or you could say halogens and toxins and heavy metals, which are like the anti-minerals, I guess you could say, that come into the body are coming in mostly through the air, the water, um, and even through electromagnetic frequencies. I mean, a lot of the electromagnetic frequencies that we're walking around in coagulate the blood, creating glycoproteins and different types of structures in the body the body has to remove these, all this coagulation, this material, and it actually creates realities. It's not just waves; they create things, and this creation has to be detoxified. And my girlfriend, she lived near these towers for 3 years, and she wasn't aware how much these waves were affecting her until I brought over an EMF meter and was able to show her like how intense of an environment she'd been living in. Now I waited until she, was getting on her way to moving out and everything else before I really said anything because I didn't want to harm her in any way by, putting her in a situation she could not avoid. But we were able to help her out. I was able to help her out through, I had some EMF protective sheets and canopy and things like that. So we were able to kind of keep that together and keep her safe. But so that's just one element that's unseen, unknown. We don't think about it. We're like, how's that affecting weight gain? That doesn't affect anything. Of course it does. All of those stresses, all of that work that the liver has to do to keep up with that level of stress. It's like Chinese medicine. The wind and all the elements were considered as stressors, and you had to be able to destroy what was what was coming in. It had to be destroyed by you and overcome by you. Otherwise, you fall prey to it. And so, if you have too much wind, too much this, too much that, and even food's the same. Like you have to be able to completely destroy what you eat and catabolize it into nutrients. And if it's not perfectly destroyed, well, then you have residues and you have things which rest in the body that have a harder time to get out, or they're unused, or there's an efficiency problem there, which has consequences always, because everything's cleanup crews, and everything takes energy. So we want a streamlined system. So in this modern world, little things like that we won't see. We also won't see how the water supply has been completely contaminated. Not only just the drinking, but that's the most important, of course, but even the water we bathe in. I don't bathe in bath waters in America anymore, in general in America, because of the, not only the chloramine, fluorine, and all these other things that they put in there, but there's also these forever chemicals they're called, and things that we cannot get out of the water, from endocrine disruptors to radon gas, to iodine 131 and radon 228. We find so many things in there that can be removed with great effort, and not through any sort of standard filtration system that you could just buy for like $1,500 or even $200. No way. But no, these systems are not made for that, and no system will tell you that. I mean, even if they're reverse osmosis or whatever, they have a mesh filter problem, which keeps them from being able to pull out some of the more volatile toxins that cross back over and re-enter through the mesh into the filtered water. And then that doesn't cover radon gas, which demands aeration and other things which are not part of standard filtration. And so there's just it's kind of a mess. And so the once you mess up the water, getting it out is very difficult. But some things can be done. I mean, like my brother, they order from this San Francisco salt company, and they order these different types of salts, sea salts or whatever, and they throw them in the bath, and you need a certain amount, 2, 3, 4 cups, maybe more, or magnesium chloride flakes. There's other things you can do to get the water to be less toxic, kind of trying to heal the water. You're removing some of the radioactive iodine. Radioactivity has been well known in Japan. Japan, they use magnesium chloride to coagulate tofu, and it's also used for radioactivity. People use it, they rinse with it, they use it in baths. They know about this there. So it's not new to them. So it's the same for us. But will it perfectly clean out the water? I have a doubt. But we are following nature, naturopath once again. We're following, the ocean. The ocean is filled with magnesium and these minerals and salt. And the salt and the magnesium, that's how bleach is made. Bleach is made from salt. This bleachy process that comes through the salt and the mineral kind of viscosity and what happens in the ocean is kind of the way the ocean cleans itself of all of these things. So we're trying to copy that in a way. But is it strong enough to get rid of everything? I have serious doubts about that, but I do believe that if you're using these salts in conjunction with bathing and maybe with children or whatever other combination you're using, it's going to make it better. But personally, I don't know how I feel about that. I probably would use a different system if I had a child, at least as a newborn. I'd probably get spring water in big jugs, and then just like a glass kind of water boilers that heats water up within 2 minutes, and then just mix that with cold and hot, and just make my own little baths for the baby for a while, and then as a young child, very young child, find a way to bring showers into it at an earlier stage and limit some of this exposure, and not having to bathe every 5 minutes either. That's kind of another thing that we do. We don't see that the body does clean itself. I mean, with the exception of greasy areas and armpits, so your skin has a flora, and in these greasy areas, the flora is not really developed very much, and that's okay. So we bring the soap in there and clean off the greasy areas. The rest of the body is allowed to develop its flora. Now, if I was using this soap on every part of my body, moosing up like they show on TV, and just destroying your microflora, and then it takes many hours for the microflora to reestablish itself, and so you keep losing this protective layer, which works to help keep you clean. So our ancestors were not just dirty people. They knew about this. We do have modern technology, and we have more hygiene, and we have easier access to heat and water and things. So we've improved. I'm not saying they didn't have their issues, but what I'm saying is that this kind of, if I go play basketball, I'm going to take a shower because I'm sweating and whatever. But if I sit around the house and I'm not doing much activity, and I go to bed at night, sometimes I could even smell my armpit and maybe see that there's a little bit of smell, but not much, but I haven't really sweated. I haven't done too much. And then when I wake in the morning, there is no more smell. It's gone. Even sometimes just before sleeping, it's already starting to disappear. So the body's cleaning itself to a certain degree, with the exception of, like I said, the grease in certain areas. And soap should last us quite a long time. And but that doesn't mean that I don't shower 4 or 5 times a week, probably, because I play a lot of basketball or I do, whatever. But I take short showers and quick, and I don't hang out in the water for too long, and I don't mind cold showers too sometimes, and especially in summer. But I mean, in general, I also challenge my body in that way sometimes too. I mean, it's okay to have some pleasure, I get it, but sometimes you can also I have an infrared sauna, and so I'll use that to get that kind of fascia detox release that you feel when the tissues are kind of very warm. And so sometimes I get it from there instead of, or massage or whatever, I get it from somewhere else than from just a bath. And this is just an adaptation strategy to overcome some of the difficulties in the environment. So water, air, air filtration system, IQ Air, the only ones I would ever buy. They're from Switzerland. They cost about $800. Most air filtration systems with standard HEPA filters filter down to 3 microns, and these are 0.03 microns, and it changes everything because you go underneath the particulate matter that is well known, and you move into what really tires the system, these microparticulates. And so this is also a key. How do you go about doing this? Well, I spoke about that in another podcast on air filtration, etc. Once we get the air and the water and these things understood, well, we stop bringing in the waves, EMF, then we start getting a better sleep. Okay, so in order to get all these things to work, we have to stop the first rule of medicine: first, do no harm. So we do have to stop harming ourselves. So once we can shut out some of the harm, and then we also have to cover our deficiencies, which I usually advise the threefold remedy: transdermal magnesium from Zechstein and Stein brand, our brand, which is a glass bottle, and Walkabout K2 emu oil, which you take a teaspoon a day, and the same teaspoon a day of fermented cod liver oil. All of these things can be found online. And only fermented, only the Walkabout brand, and only the brand I mentioned for the magnesium. And so these three, I call the threefold remedy. So we have to get these going daily for 2 or 3 months to get this built up. The magnesium will take a little longer to heal, like about a year, but it'll, we're starting to take this out. We're starting to get these deep deficiencies out. So once this happens and we've healed some of our environment, we'll start feeling again, meaning we'll start feeling what's wrong with the air and the water and things. We'll start becoming more alive to it, and our body will start to adapt to this, and it'll know. I mean, I didn't even, at a certain point, I didn't even need the EMF meter anymore because I knew when things were happening. My girlfriend would turn on the Wi-Fi in our apartment and not tell me because there was a reason she had to do an upload for her phone or whatever it was, an update, and I would randomly be like, "Did you turn the Wi-Fi on?" And it was like, it only happened once every 6 months, but on the same day that she did it, it was the same moment that I asked her. And so it was like my body was able to pick up on these things only because I'd been able to clean up the environment enough to where it could feel the foreign energy or item or whatever it was, the foreign aggressor. It could feel it. And I couldn't feel it whenever I had my own, when I was submerged in all this stuff. So So we have to heal these two things. And so this ties into weight gain. This is so, it's like you don't even have to say the word weight gain, or weight loss or any of that, because this is all connected to it. So here's some interesting things to know about the body. And they're coming from different theories and different people who've had different thoughts on this, which I have found to be true in my own experience. So one is that the body will gain weight in order to protect itself from toxins. So the toxins get in the body, and the body has no other recourse but to store them in fats, and then those fats build up. And so what happens is it's trying to take all those toxins and shield them from harming the body. So that's one thing. So you're like, wow, okay, so that's protecting me from something, this weight gain or whatever. And then another thing is like water weight gain is the same. Like your body can take in water and the same effect to dilute certain toxins, maybe maybe more hydrophilic toxins than the lipophilic, fat-based, I guess you could say, lipid-based toxins. And so um, this is needed to dilute as well. The water can be used to pick up weight gain to dilute as well. This water may be then lost over the next year, or it may come back out slowly but surely if needed, or so the fats too, depending on what's changed in the environment or if that toxin is still pervasive. So the other thing is iodine in the atmosphere. Now iodine stores in fat, but you cannot release it. You can't detoxify fats without iodine. They help to break down the fats and help detoxify it. So, and it's also stored in fat. It's like little keys built into the system. And sometimes you have to iodine reload, and that's what I was doing with the raw milk cure. Like I found some really good milk in California. It took forever because a lot of the raw milk here sucks. It's acidic. You make like quark or some sort of cottage cheese with it, and it smells much more. The room smells much more than it did when I was making these in France all the time. And so I was like, what's wrong with this milk? And then it turns out, it's also the wrong climate for milk, this kind of like not tropical, but semi-Mediterranean climate. So I found some milk coming from the northernmost tip of California, and this has the taste, the iodine taste. It has that thickness, it has that richness, it has a heavy cream that's almost like a sweetness. It's like the best tasting milk I've found, and or at least on the West Coast. And so this I would do like I did like a few months of it, but I mean some people just do momentary thing once a month where they'll just load and they'll buy like 6 bottles of this and just drink that pretty much for 2 or 3 days without drinking much else. I mean, or that's more of like a cure, but I mean you can also just incorporate it in like a glass every night or whatever. But so what will happen is this can bring about more of you can actually gain weight from that too, the milk. And so the milk is a sugar, so it can cause like a kind of that type of weight gain where you're thinking, well, I'm eating too many carbs, I guess you could say, call it like sugar. But the funny thing is this iodine is actually storing in all the fat cells. So it stores in all the fat cells and it's being pushed into them. So you feel like you're gaining a little weight, like a little girth or your pants. You're not going to gain weight like in an abnormal way, like I get a gut only, or no, it's going to be girths type of weight. Like it's just going to be perfect shaped, but a little more thickness or whatever. And so this is going to create iodine stores in the body, which can last for a long time. The body can use as well. So it's kind of like loading. You're kind of loading the iodine at a certain point. And milk is much better source of iodine than anything else, and butter and the fats and all that. When you can find good quality butters like French butter, you can taste the iodine in the back of it. If it's a good butter like Isigny, for example, or there's a lot of them actually, German Alpine butter and even some of the Irish stuff if they don't use soy as the feed. But so you can taste the iodine a little bit in the background. It gives it kind of a standalone taste. And so all of these things are going to help contribute to an iodine loading much more than even just eating like, seaweeds and oysters and things like that, which oysters are amazing. So I'm not like knocking that. But what I'm saying is the milk is like it's unlike seaweed or some of these like things you can eat, like fruits and things that you can eat that have iodine or vanilla extract is also another interesting one, that which can enrich the milk as well. But so whenever you find these items, it's like they're much more powerful coming when the animal has already processed them, which would be the case in the milk. So the animal's already processed it, and then the iodine becomes really readily available. And so this is a much faster loading, and it was one of the number one sources of iodine for people in mountain communities and in general, even in the UK, I think milk was considered as the iodine source. I mean, I know in the mountains, the Italians would eat like capers, and a lot of people would eat capers, and there was different ways that you could get a vegetal iodine, which could back you up in case of needs. But as far as loading goes, animal converted iodine from the vegetal is going to be much more quick and rapid and powerful. So as long as you don't have a full-on milk allergy, which sometimes it's coming, the allergy itself is coming from the lack of iodine in the milk. I mean, it can be. That can be a factor. I know that for me, my thyroid would get triggered every time I drink this low iodine milk, even if it was raw milk. And whenever I had high iodine milk, my thyroid would not only be okay, but I would even feel better. I mean, it didn't give me like milk kind of tires me sometimes, and I think that's a good thing because it's the other thing that's very hard to find in the modern world is tryptophan, like a good source of it, especially in California. Because if you can find a chicken that has tryptophan in it that's actually lived a normal life of, being out in nature, or you can, where it's not fed like soy, and all, but that's almost impossible to find. I mean, all the chickens are fed soy, and all the birds, like fowl, are fed soy, and so if you can find one that has a little tryptophan in it, well, then they also freeze it usually because the only place to find the decent stuff is through ordering online or whatever. So then it's frozen. So frozen plus a little soy here and there, plus industrial, plus this, that, and the other, you get to like it's hard for you to get that tryptophan delivered to you in a fresh state. So it's hard to get that dose, and so this can help with that. And sometimes that tiredness is exactly what we're looking for, to help us recover. It's a part of the body that helps to heal and recover, and that's like a big killer out here in California and probably everywhere else. But with the 5G, 4G, whatever, the 5G hasn't been fully rolled out yet. Even it's just in name to a certain degree, but the 4G and all these towers that are already set up here, depending on your proximity, I mean, they destroy deep sleep. So that was talked about in another podcast as well. But you can't understand weight loss and weight gain if you don't understand these topics. Toxins and deficiencies. Those two are the first things that you have to root out. Sleep is going to be a huge factor in weight loss too, in healthy weight, in maintaining your weight, sleep itself and recovery, because this is going to allow for you to detoxify properly each night and get some of this out. I mean, we sweat like nearly a kilo or a pound and a half or something every night. When we sleep, it comes out not through sweat, like beady sweat, but it comes out through air and carbon and water and things that come out of us as we breathe. And so this has a certain significant weight, and this is part of how we detoxify at night. So if we take some of that away, well, then we're gonna, keep it inside. That's the whole thing. Things that don't get out stay in. So exercise is important, and magnesium levels being optimized is very important to chelate and pull all this stuff out of the bloodstream, out to the sweat glands, and away from us, because we're filled with the endocrine disruptors in everything, from plastics to soy to all the food and everything we buy, and even the colza and canola and margarine and all these other things that we use, they're also endocrine disruptors, even though they're not soy. So we've got just a world of pain, and so we have to wake up from it. And so these things are contributing to weight loss. Now, some theories on weight loss, which could be interesting as well, is there was one theory that was set up by Johannes von der Planets, which is a strange name, but anyway, and it was an interesting theory about the fact that he would buy like bigger size clothing, and he would have to go back down to a smaller size, like maybe 2 sizes up, and he would rotate between these 2 sizes as he went through these phases, like which could be 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, phases of detoxification. And so things would be, he had some type of cancer, and so he went through a lot of these processes to heal, and he found that he had to gain weight and then re-lose it, and this process was helping him knock out a lot of the toxins in his body. Now, he was using a lot of raw foods, raw meat, raw animal foods, that was his whole thing or whatever. But so so it's interesting how sometimes what you think is bad for your body, oh, I'm gaining some weight here, but it's like your body's loading and then it's going to re-release or whatever. Now, if you have thyroid issues, it might be harder to like ever come back down. It just seems to keep going up or whatever, but it should stabilize. Health is more of a stability thing, you know. It's not like a we're just going to keep getting fat or whatever. It's usually there might be a thickness, but that thickness will be attractive to a certain degree and be within a certain norm, you know? And so that's one interesting thing that people had never thought of, that you could gain weight and then re-lose it, and that would be a process of detoxification, and you would change pant sizes to come back to the initial pant size, or a little bit, maybe not always come back perfectly, but yes, you will stabilize. You can come back to a certain size and stabilize. So that's another way, another unorthodox way of looking at it. The body has a weight point system in it to where a lot of the hormones that it needs are based on this weight point. And so if you have, for example, like when women they go into menopause, they usually gain weight, and one of the reasons is because the estrogen that they're producing in their ovaries, which are fading, is now. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's not produced somewhere else in the body. That source is dying out. So there's a production which is taken over in a much smaller dose by the kidney or the cortex or whatever. So we have little doses coming out, but it's not the same. So in order to make up for that lack of estrogen, well, it can either be stored in fats, the estrogen, and so there's some weight gain there, and also the lack of estrogen also keeps that like the lack of estrogen is helped by the fact that there's more weight on the system. So if we have more weight on the system, then there's more estrogen that's produced. It's kind of like if you look at how bones grow, like bones, we know that they grow from the end point. So the end point of the bone is where it's the most stressed. And so that stress, like basketball players, the reason they're so tall is because they've constantly stressed their bones in a certain type of way. And so that certain type of way of jumping and, reaching and all the stuff that they do in basketball creates longer and longer bones, and it makes them taller and taller. So they become what they are, I guess. They become that because they're put that downward pressure is making a resistance, which is allowing that bone to grow more. And so you have this same sort of idea with the menopause, where that pressure is allowing for not the bone, well, you could say the bone to grow too, because estrogen helps with that, and that's why osteoporosis is a big deal at this age, because we've lost our protection which the estrogen gives us. So they're totally linked to the hormones in the body. And so the hormones are linked to the weight point. And sometimes the weight point cannot be budged. You could try everything in your arsenal to stop it, and the body will not let you change the weight point. That doesn't mean you can't shape the body and do different things, but sometimes even when you gain weight, you still look better because you're just turning it into muscle. But so I recommend throwing out scales pretty much forever. I never use a scale for anything. I mean, maybe you could use it once a year just to kind of check in on where you're at with that. But in general, like it's all about the clothing. That's going to tell you more than anything else. And because, you're going to change, your muscles going to change. I play basketball a lot. I've gained a lot of muscle through, running daily and stuff like that. Um, there's different things you're going to do which are going to create more muscle than fatty tissue or whatever. So so these are all important factors for health, and so in order to get that to move that weight point, I mean, there's all this crazy, like, what do they, they do these high intensity workouts with no sleep, and they try to like force the the GH hormone to push the growth hormone to push through, because it feels the body's in such a state of stress that it just triggers it. And I think this is horrible, because I believe in what Dr. Howe said about enzymes, and that there's a limited number, kind of like a bank account, and that there is some notion to that. I'm not sure exactly if all hormones follow the same exact principle, but there's a notion that there's a bank account, and that the more, if we spend them all up, well, then they're spent. And even that goes for GH. I mean, the GH could come in and help you in time of sickness, maybe, but you wouldn't have it anymore because you just pushed it all through your health program or whatever. So, anyway, so a lot of these things we have to look at health. And so if you want to find a way to lose weight, once all the healthy fats and you've rooted out your diet, I mean, most of the diet has to be completely changed if you want to avoid all these things. I mean, you have to start ordering online. You have to find soy-free eggs, corn-free eggs, which they have outdoor access to pasture, because I've even seen soy-free, corn-free, which are completely in these CAFO concentration farms. And so that is quite surprising to see something such a need in the organic world to have soy free, and then it's a soy free, but it's a bad one. I mean, okay, to their credit, maybe it's better than the non-soy free version of the concentrated farm for the regular eggs, like, so who knows? Like, in the end of the day, everybody will be judged for whatever good they were able to muster, and so maybe there's some good done there. With the hormones that are in the environment, everything we're eating, like a whole new way of looking at the diet has to be done. A lot of imports, seafood, herring, lamb instead of red meat if you can't find the right red meat, lamb broth, a lot of broth with the bones and things like that from this imported lamb, and just there's herring, and there's many tricks that we'll need to use to survive in a healthy way without having to absorb all this stuff. This is going to be your best way from weight gain. Otherwise, you're just going to be a gym freak. You have to become a full-on gym freak, which is what LA has become. And you lose touch with the soul and the spirit. You're just in body and soul. You're not in spirit anymore, and you just always sharpening that. And that can create an amazing body and a total asshole of society, like, astringent personality, antisocial. I'm not saying all antisocial behavior is bad. I'm not in that bracket. I do believe you need to find a balance between social and antisocial. So I see that you need to be in the middle of that, where you know how to take time and meditate and pull out and away from the world, but you also, so it's not just like, antisocial is not a bad word for me. It's a balance thing once again. But even that, you create these type of personalities that are just astringent. And so in this whole modality, it's just everybody's focused on their abs, and they're focused, and it's a downward slope. And I've seen it here. I go to this expo here, and I see all of these bodies and these women and these shapes, and it's just like, for me, I'm like, it's like over focus, on the body. And so we want to try to find a way to get free, where we can focus on all three aspects of our being without having to be overly focused on any one. But in order to do that, we have to first do no harm. So hopefully this can help you with your the Asian philosophy of non, where it's like non-action. So it's like, it looks like you're acting, but you're not, in a way. Or like meditation, and something that looks so still can be like the highest form of action. This is kind of like non-action in place. So what I'm basically giving you is a podcast on non-weight loss. So it's like, we're not talking about tricks and things that you're supposed to do for weight loss, like, per se, but we're basically taking apart the whole perspective and how that has contributed to everything. And so, if we were to focus on the 5 basics, eggs, butter, milk, bread, and maybe meat or some other protein like that, we'd realize that if we would have really focused all of our energy on perfecting those and the deficiencies, just perfecting those 5 items, like getting the best of each of those items, we would go much further with our health than a million different directions that we have to aim for everything. That has us running around like chickens with our heads cut off trying to find the latest thing or whatever. So that's where we've become dispersed to a certain degree. Anyway, if this can be of help to anyone, I hope so. And sorry for my voice today. I was, like I said, I got my first flu in 2 years of living back in America, and so it's good because it cleaned me out, and I was really happy. I'm usually always happy when I'm really sick, because I'm like, clean it out, clean it all out, detoxify. So now I'm coming out on the other side, and anyway, I thought I'd do this podcast. So come check us out. at theheartoftradition.com for more. Thanks.